Hello and welcome to the Tongue of the Trees. I'm Elizabeth Ashley, the Secret Healer. I'm sorry I haven't been around for a while. Today's video is, what is Helichrysum Essential Oil good for? So, like I say, I'm apologising that I haven't been around for a while, but this one is one of my favourites. For those of you who don't know, I've written a book about Helichrysum. It's called For the Wound That Will Not Heal, and you can find it on Amazon. And if you've never seen Helichrysum, here it is. This is Helichrysum italicum that we get the essential oil from. Actually, the Helichrysum species is massive. It has 600 different types, all that look very, very different to each other. And one of the key features of a Helichrysum is that the flowers are everlasting. So in my book, I wrote some work about some archaeological evidence that they found at Hawara. So if you don't know what Hawara is, it's a place in Egypt, which is a Roman mausoleum. So in Egypt, but Roman. And what they'd done was they had mummified their dead in the same way that the Egyptians had done. And actually, I saw one of these Hawara mummies when I went to, I don't know, Ashmolean, the Ashmolean in Oxford, and they're absolutely stunning to see. The bandages have been beautifully, intricately crisscrossed and studied, so it's a beautiful work of art. And then the Romans took mummification one step further, and rather than just having a mummy, what they did was they painted exquisite portraits of the person who had died and bound that into the bandages. So you've got this painted face. So the reason why I'm telling you about this was there was this tremendous find at Hawara of a mummy with Helichrysum, a necklace and a pair of earrings in place. And 2,000 years later, they still had their fragrance, and they looked quite as bright as these, because these only came out yesterday. In fact, yeah, if you look at the bottom ones, they're starting to fade now, but those are dead. So that's what they look like 2,000 years later. Incredible, huh? Now, the reason why they would have been used was the ancient Romans and Greeks both used to use, it was called the amaranth then, to crown their victors and crown their gods. So if you were a statue in Roman and Greek times, you would have had the amaranth crowned upon you. So just a bit of a funny story is that my son Dexter, he does like to dress up, and I do like to make costumes. That's one of my biggest passions. And he had to be something for ancient Greek day. So I'd got a million ideas of what I wanted. What do you want to be, Dex? Poseidon. Poseidon? How the hell do I do Poseidon? Anyway, I must see if I can find a photograph out for this video. I mean, there's Poseidon. His clothes were all like sea foam, and he had this amazing crown that I made, all covered in shells and capped with Helichrysum, because he was a Greek god. So there it was all round. So that crown sat in here in the shed for a good year, because let's be honest, when you're not Poseidon, what are you going to use it for? It's taken me that long, I didn't want to throw it away. And the fragrance was still strong when I threw it away 18 months after I'd made it out, but it's become overwhelming, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. It's a dirty, dusty thing, and that still smell The Helichrysum, exactly the same. That's how strong it is. Now, the reason why I'm telling you that is that gives you such an insight into how the plant works. Later, Gagle will talk about blending it in video 2. Which you can find the video to in the link below. We'll also talk about the emotional, mental and spiritual aspects of Helichrysum, although I have to say this will cascade over into that because I find them inextricably linked. But yeah, and also the safety, because there are some safety issues. So, but to remember that when you're using it, it's pervasive, you know, it's around for all the time, but it's a beautiful masculine fragrance. You may recognise it and not realise what it was. You may have it growing in your garden called the curry plant. That is Helichrysum italicum. I love the smell, but I have to say my husband absolutely hates it. He's like, why have we got this in the house again? But it's beautiful, it's beautiful. So the interesting thing about Helichrysum, and there are many interesting things about Helichrysum, and I will abbreviate somewhat, but I cannot stress to you enough, please read the book because there were so many interesting things to find out about it. But one of the most interesting, I always think of the plant hunters in the 1990s. The drugs companies started sending out lots of researchers out into the Amazon rainforest, all of these different places to try and work out about the medicines that were being used in traditional medicine. So this is very much a European plant, and the interesting thing about it is wherever it grows it will have different chemistry. So depending on where your bottle of Helichrysum was sourced from, it will have different chemistry. That said, we have an overarching theme of it does certain things. But so there's sort of 3 really important chemical components within it. Italidones, which make it very good for the skin. Neryl acetate, which is one of the most important things for these differences. Again, skin. And also beta caryophyllene, which is anti-inflammatory, anti-immunity, and we'll talk about that one a bit more in depth as we get a bit more skilled as the video goes on. So you may have also seen there's a major skincare retailer, L'Occitane or L'Occitane, have a range, a skincare range called Immortelle or Everlasting, and that is made of this. Look at the stem. For looking at the doctrine of signatures, if you looked at this with a bit of knowledge about plants, you might be able to work out where it came from. So the first thing is, see how it's got this beautiful silvery stem? That is an evolutionary trait of plants that grow in very hot, harsh, dry conditions. So Mediterranean, think warm and dry and dusty, and think here these are also for tiny little plants to deal with harsh winds, you know. Think how well that would pollinate as well. So if you are interested in insects, bees in particular are interested in pink plants, blue plants and yellow plants. And this is a strange thing that you wouldn't expect. So if you looked at the classification of the plant, you would think, well, what does that come from? Actually, it's the same family as or same genus as the sunflower. It is a compositae or an asteraceae. And compositae means made up of lots and lots of flowers, little individual flowers. So if you looked at a sunflower, you would see that the middle was made up of loads and loads of tiny little flowers. Well, it's more obvious to see here. And so this is something that grows where there are lots of insects that require its pollination from here. So, and you can smell the honeyness of it completely. So what do we use it for? Well, as I say, my book is called For the Wound That Will Not Heal. And we definitely see this on a psychological basis, which we'll talk about in the next video. The spiritual aspects are fascinating to learn, both relating to that wound that will not heal, and I'll explain how that works. But if you think of skin, if you think of burns, if you think of ulcers, as in legs rather than mouth, I'm sure you could use it in mouth, but I could, actually you can eat it. It is, you do find it in some like Sardinian and Maltese recipes I found. It's not very nice. It's very bitter tasting. But ulcerated skin, eczema, psoriasis, anywhere where the skin breaks, dry skin, particularly mature skin, acne, any of those things that have been going on for a long, long time and will not heal, for the wound that will not heal. So we talked about beta-caryophyllene. So beta-caryophyllene is a very interesting chemical constituent that occurs in many, many plants. And it's what's called a cannabimimetic. So that means that it mimics the endocannabinoid system. So for those of you who don't know, that's a system that works inside our body that modulates our neurotransmission and our hormones and everything that switches up and switches down in the body. It's called endocannabinoid. Endo means in the body. Cannabinoid means found through cannabis, because it was discovered by researching cannabis and how the body responds to cannabis. So the endocannabinoid system is made up of 2 predominant receptors. That makes it sound like it's in 2 places. It's not. They're pretty much on every single cell in the body. CB1 is predominantly in the brain and in the brain stem, and it relates to pain, hunger, memory, cognition, mood, itching, nausea, lots of things. CB2 is what we're interested in. CB2 is in the periphery, so not the brain, not the brain stem, not the spinal cord, outside of that, and predominantly on the blood and lymphatic tissues. It's involved in immunity, inflammation and pain. I'll say those again. CB2 receptors are involved in immunity, inflammation, pain. So beta-caryophyllene is what's called a weak agonist for the CB2 receptor. That means to a certain small degree it will influence the working of the CB2 receptor. So based on how much beta-caryophyllene we have in a particular plant will show how effective it will be for that particular process. Also bear in mind that we have to be very careful not to be too scientifically reductionist about the plant. In other words, in this plant there is, or in the essential oil that comes from this plant, there is around about 5% beta-caryophyllene. So therefore the medicine of the plant, as well as other things, will be anti-inflammatory, immune boosting and also pain relieving. Do not be misled by the 5%. That would make it sound like it was less. There are other constituents that do it, but we can say because it has that in there, we know that it will do those jobs. So let me have a look at my notes, and from that now we'll start to understand how these actions can come about. So first of all, it's antispasmodic. It helps with cramps, with coughs and with tummy aches. So those sound like a strange thing, but this idea of so you know, that where might that come from? Well, it can come from any of the different constituents, but we can think, well, yeah, anti-immunity, antispasmodic comes from anti-inflammatory. We can see how that would have that effect, can't we? So anything like if you've got restless legs, period pains, cramps in your legs, spasms in your hands, RSI. I can tell you that I suffer from RSI in my hands, and that I often use Helichrysum. It has a very warming nature. You know, so for example, something like peppermint is cooling. That's easy to understand, isn't it? How peppermint is cooling. Or ginger is heating. It's not as powerful as ginger, but it does have this warming, nurturing element to it. So if you start to think like, oh God, it's really hurting me and getting me down, it does feel like you have this blanket around you. It's lovely, Helichrysum. It also prevents blood thickening. So if somebody has high cholesterol, or I'm smiling to myself because that's probably explained something to me. I always wonder why my cholesterol is so low when I eat far too much rubbish. Maybe it's all the Helichrysum that I use, but it's also blood thinning. Which is one of the reasons why I use it so much. I am a thrombophiliac. So my blood thickens very easily and can clot. In the past, it's led to blood clots in my lungs. So I tend to use blood thinning essential oils as my best friend. But if you are somebody, for example, if you're factor 5 Leiden, or you have thrombosis, or pulmonary embolism, just like me, then this is a wonderful choice. Bear in mind too, where I said those CB2 receptors are, they're on the lymphatic tissue and they're on the blood cells, aren't they? So straight away we have that strong affinity to the blood and the lymphatic system. So the next thing on my list is clotting and menstruation. Yeah, that's a good one. If you, sorry lads, it's revolting, but I'm going to go there. Ladies, if you have one of those tremendous periods where you wipe and you think, heavens above, what is that? Then your blood's getting thicker, yeah? So it's not to the point that we're worrying that it's right through the body, but there is some kind of strength in the blood, particularly in the womb at that point. And so next month, if you think, oh, that really hurt me last month, okay, nice oil to choose, really, really nice oil to choose. Put it with some clary sage, some rose, some lavender. Use it on your tummy right through the month and just relax that clotting down. Between you and I often find that people who experience bad clotting in their periods are going through a time when they feel very angry. Things are starting to be held onto to congeal. So it's worth considering that too. And bear in mind that psychologically, this is for the wound that will not heal. As I say, look at the next video if you think, oh, I really want to get my teeth into that. It's very good for digestion. And as I say, it can be eaten, but I don't really think it's very nice. But as an essential oil, if you've got sluggish digestion, or if you have, those of you who watch the videos often will see that I am very interested in acid reflux, because I went through a time where I had it a lot, where your body just doesn't seem to work fast enough. If you watch the ginger video, we talk about Anyi, how we have this fire of metabolism that moves things faster. So not only does it churn the digestion, but you can feel the heat coming through the body. You sweat more, your brain works faster, you're absolutely more on it, you've got more energy, and the whole metabolic system moves up a gear. And you don't see that better with any other oil than ginger. It's, if you do watch the ginger video, if you haven't, because I'll describe how it has a particular affinity for pitta dosha. It's too much for pitta dosha, and as somebody who's as pale as me with this red hair, I just it went, it was like fire, woman. So if ginger does that quite so much, it gives you an understanding of how essential oils can work. This is not so much. This is gentler. So for somebody like me, who ginger is wonderful, but a little bit too much too often, this is great. So it fires the metabolism, so the digestion gets better, but we start, as the Anyi moves, we feel more upbeat, we feel stronger in our minds, we think clearer, all of that comes from digestion, from the biome, from the serotonin that's stored down there. Do not underestimate the connection between the mind, body and spirit, particularly through the gut flora. If you've got good digestion, the whole of your spiritual outlook will be better. Your mental outlook, your emotional outlook. And so this, if we have sluggish digestion, is delicious. And likewise, for the same reason, sluggish circulation. So, like I say, for my RSI, when I rub it on, we have this warming nature. It's the energy starting to move. Things are moving on. Not as much as it would with black pepper, but if you mix it with black pepper, it's delicious. So Raynaud's disease, cold feet, anything where, you know, if you have a sedentary job where you sit down a lot and just, there's nothing wrong with your circulation. You just think, I'm ever so cold again. What's the matter with me? Well, that's what's the matter with you. Your circulation's slowed down. So use these things to go whoosh. And you're more sparkly. Immediately you can see, you know, the colours come back to your cheeks. You know how sometimes, well, going back to my lungs again, when I had my pulmonary embolism, because the oxygen wasn't circulating round my blood, I was blue, you know. And incidentally, that's something that I've seen with, I've heard people talk about with COVID, that you might see these people who are asymptomatic yet for COVID, but the medical practitioners are looking in front of them and going, whoa, you are blue. There is no oxygen in your blood. So this kind of movement of fluid, we can see how it was, you know, the hypoxia has turned them blue. Now, I wouldn't recommend getting your pot of, well, actually, I would recommend getting the Helichrysum out, but I would also recommend ringing the ambulance if that's the case. But that was a good example of how we can see the circulation impacting the whole of the body. You know, you can see it in somebody's face. They've gone blue. My little boy was born blue because he didn't breathe for very quickly. And then suddenly, as soon as he did breathe, ooh, little pink, splodgy creature. But he was like a horrible little alien. He was so blue. And then the last thing on my list is probably the thing that people will use it mostly for, and that's the skin. So, like I say, for the wound that will not heal, but skincare generally for congested skin where it's, you know, like if you have a smoker and their skin looks thick, or a drinker looks thick, and it's like none of the, or actually there's a good example. To get the best skin care, we really must slough off the dead skin. Otherwise, what we get to get the look of translucency is we need new, fresh skin cells. They're dead, that's what skin cells are, but they're new to the top. So the dead ones, if we're not careful, they do slough off, because that's what the dust is in the air, you know. It's everywhere. But if we make a concerted effort to get them off, using something like, for example, hazelnut oil, if you're not allergic to nuts, rubbing it on, or some kind of abrasive, wheat germ, ground almonds, brown sugar, anything like that with a bit of oil, and really just massage it in, what you'll find is suddenly you're uncovering this beautiful, thin, translucent skin. And what we find is exactly the same kind of nature of Helichrysum. Helichrysum helps the new skins generate. So if you can bring together this beautiful exfoliation, is what it's called, the exfoliation of the skin, and then using Helichrysum, actually the same thing with rose, that the keratinocytes, the very young new skin cells right below the granular layer, become thicker and plumper and grow faster. And so you have this regeneration that's much quicker. And then what do we look at? We look younger. But more importantly than doing it from a cosmetic point of view, and don't let me deride how important that is, but if somebody has eczema, for example, or psoriasis where it grows so fast, you know, it grows really thick, doesn't it? Then you have those, what do we call them, plaques. That's your congestion. Well, okay, so the Helichrysum helps to heal that over, but also then slow down the plaques, and you have this much better healing process. Incidentally, if you want you to do something like that, then have a look in our recipe hub. We have put lots of recipes using Helichrysum oil this month, and I'll run through them in a minute. But if you are not clear on how to mix the essential oils together, you say, well, that's all very well, Liz, but I don't know how to put that together. That's fantastic. Have a look at the links in the go to video 2, and then on my website I'll show you my recipe hub, where in the videos we talk just like this, and I say, right, we're going to have 2 drops of that, 3 drops of that, and this is why, and we have to be careful of this and think about the safety from that, and we go deeply into it. So I've got here on the next slide, historical successes of using Helichrysum essential oil have included that it's antiviral. So what's among you? Which constituent can we say is probably has a good bearing on that? Your beta-caryophyllene. So what's really interesting, and as I say, I'm probably giving away a lot of spoilers from the book here, is that beta-caryophyllene, Helichrysum, in a petri dish, not in a person, incidentally, not as far as I know anyway yet, in a petri dish can kill HIV. How about that for a wound that will not heal? In a petri dish, not in a human as far as I know yet. Also, I can't remember how to say it in the shorthand, I think it's HSV, but HPV. Yes, human papillomavirus, which is herpes. So what would you use it for? Well, great if you've got a cold sore. Great if you've got genital warts. Can it get it out of the system? We can still remains to be seen. But in a petri dish, yes, it does. For the wound that will not heal, because once that's in the system, can't get rid of it. So on the slide, it also says help sustain levels of arachidonic acid. So what is that? So arachidonic acid is the substrate that endocannabinoids are made from. So when we have it in our body, that means that we have enough nourishment, if you like, to make endocannabinoids to feed the whole of the neurotransmission and the whole of the hormonal support. So, for example, if we had some kind of deficiency of endocannabinoids, we might see anxiety, we might see depression, we might see pain, we might see hormonal imbalance. So then if we say, right, okay, well, we've got more arachidonic acid, we're more likely to see levels, strong levels. What's interesting is, traditionally we say that it's ruled by the sun. I also say it's ruled by Chiron, but I'm not going to go into that. That's gone very deeply in the book. But the sun is usually yellow flowers. And sun medicines are fortifying. They're about the ego, they're about conscious thought, but they're about being strong. So, for example, sunflower oil, we eat it, don't we, to be stronger. Very, very strong fortifying medicine. We've talked about how it'd be very good for pain. We've talked about the magical ingredients, italidones, typically about 5%. Nerol acetate. Nerol acetate levels vary a lot between where it's grown. So your highest level ones will be from Corsica, Sardinia, those kinds of areas, or from Bulgaria. And the oil with the higher levels of nerol acetate will be the better ones for the skin, and particularly for preventing scarring on the skin. That said, they're hard to get hold of. You will also see them from places like Croatia. Those are lower in nerol acetate, but they're still wonderful for the skin. but I also find that they are more antimicrobial if you balance the two. Would I pick one over the other? Actually, no, I wouldn't. I'd go... Actually, what I would do is go and see if I can find a proper producer and say, I want that. I want that I've seen you distill. But no, I don't think that there's any balance between you should definitely have that and you definitely should have that. At this level, where you and I are having a discussion and you don't even know what it's for, by all means, collect over time to learn the subtleties. But no, at that level, no difference. So let me, on my list, I've put down what recipes I've put into the recipe hub for you. As I say, in the next video, we're going to talk about the emotional, mental and spiritual aspects, as well as Gaga is going to talk about how to blend it. And I will also talk about the safety. So we will have another 5 emotional videos. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the physical ones that we've done, there's a video on how to make an aftershave balm with Helichrysum, one about how to make a psoriasis ointment, one about how to use Helichrysum for joint pain, for its antiviral properties, one for a fortifying lotion after trauma. So actually I would use that for psychological trauma, but particularly for if you've had an injury, because it's tremendous for healing the skin but also bringing down the bruising. I had quite a bad accident, I don't know how long ago now, maybe 3 years ago, where we were doing some work outside the house and the drain was open, so we'd put a slab over the top of the drain. Unbeknownst to me, the slab had weakened. I stepped on it because it was right near where we've got the washing line, the whirligig thing. I stepped on it, went down into the drain, and the slabs came back and trapped my legs. It was really, really terribly painful, and I made a terrible mess of my legs. The Helichrysum was tremendous healer, tremendous. I put some on immediately, and within the next day, I have to say, it was really bruised. But the bruising went down very, very quickly. And of course, when the bruising comes out and it swells up, that inflammation is to protect the area, to help all of the healing go on. It works so fast. And the pain had gone in about 3 days, which it was the kind of injury that some people never come back from. It was really chronically bad. But the Helichrysum was tremendous. And that was using the hydrolat. I sprayed it with Helichrysum hydrolat. There's a recipe in there for tendinitis, any of those of you who don't know. So for example, housemaid's knee, tennis elbow, RSI, all of those things where the tendon becomes overused. Helichrysum, and we have a recipe about how to make that, and bruises. So it says, I've put more emotional, mental and spiritual recipes, but we'll talk more about that in video 2, which we will. So I think now that's probably giving you a tremendous grounding about how you can use your bottle of essential oil. If you haven't got one, I would say this is one of the essential oils that you should have. And if you have a look in the link below, we'll show you how to go to this video 2, but also how to get our Tongue of the Trees cards. I should have said that in the second video we'll be talking about how Helichrysum Essential Oil is tremendously good for empathy, and also a couple of essential oil suppliers that we recommend that can give you your Helichrysum Essential Oil. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye. Go to the video below and then I'll talk about the stuff that I'm really passionate about. How to use Helichrysum Essential Oil for the mind, body, spirit. So for now though, this is what is Helichrysum Essential Oil good for the physical body. See ya.